Back to racing here at Joliet, Illinois, Chicagoland Speedway. There's your leader, Thomas Schechter, followed by Sam Horn as part of the Penske team. Dan Weldon, the current points leader. Tony Kanaan sits in fourth. And Dario Franchitti, we've got a big yellow coming into turn 4. All kinds of debris, and it's the 33, the back end. That is Ryan Briscoe, who initially qualified on the pole. And as Jamie Little reported, after an infraction to his car during post-qualifying, he was disqualified, sent to the back of the pack. And there you see it in one of the Red Bull Cheever drivers. Looks like maybe Patrick Carpentier exiting his car quickly. He is moving, but Scotty, right now, the most important thing is to get him extricated from that vehicle.
Those cars are meant to come apart like that, Todd. I know actually looks like it's just a mess. That's the engine front in the car, possibly. There's a lot of debris going on there. The bell housing and the transmission. It's made to break away from the cocoon, as we call it, the car. There you can see right there some oil fires starting, a lot of body work that's sitting on top of that. The engine must be somewhere else because it looks like it's possibly just the bell housing and the transmission. And the monocoque itself is where those guys are. And there's Koski Masura, the number 55, the Panasonic car that actually was involved in this. And he had a crash earlier in the weekend when he got hit from Thomas Enge's car out in practice. And disappointing for him because he finished 6th just last week at Sonoma. A great finish for him that he's had.
Well, Koski's moving. That's the important thing, Scott. And I want to correct myself. That's 51 Alex Barron, the Red Bull Cheever driver who got out of his car so quickly. Alex Barron actually walking down on the grass infield by pit in. Koski Matsura and Ryan Briscoe, the 3 cars right now that are involved. And it looks like Ryan Briscoe's car took the worst of it.
All that smoke that's coming out, that'll be actually extinguished by the Delphi safety crew right there as you see a look at the Red Bull target.
Well, here it is again. Here's how they come into 3, Scotty.
Actually, you can see on the very underside what a ride that was. Remember we had last year with Buddy Rice getting airborne coming out of turn 2 when they touched wheels. And here's the situation. Briscoe going underneath. Barron trying to come down on the racetrack. They both are going for the same piece of real estate. And what ends up happening is those rubber tires touch, and then all of a sudden the car starts to go in the air. Remember, we're going 215 miles an hour. Look at all the debris that's going all around the racetrack. This will be a long cleanup time. And there's the engine separated from both the transmission and the monocoque where the driver sits. That's what we call kitty litter right there going on the racetrack, Todd, to dry up all that oil that starts to come off of
Scott,
those vehicles.
Let's look at this one more time and see if we can see the genesis of this accident.
Now looking straight ahead, you can see the cars just starting to come together. A little bit of rub, smoke coming off the tires when they touch. And then all of a sudden, as we're riding on board Scott Dixon's car, he sees this. He was actually a spectator in the crash just last year. Now watch those left side wheels. Those are down on the flat underneath the white line. He did a great job keeping that car straight with 2 wheels on the 18-degree banking, 2 wheels on the flat down on the entrance.
Oh my, look at that. And that is the fence by the safer barrier. And Scott, as a driver, you see your teammate have an accident like that. I mean, that was reminiscent of what happened to Kenny Breck in Texas.
Something like that. You can see the safer barrier was hit very difficultly on the right-hand side. Probably those are big marks that you see there, all from the wheels on those 2 there. And the thing now for these guys is to get the fence fixed, and that's going to have to be a situation where it's going to take quite a few laps to repair that.
Well, if we can look at it one more time, the first angle we had as they are coming into turn number 3, and they're starting to make their way into turn 4. It looks as though Alex Barron comes down on Ryan Briscoe, and then somehow air gets underneath Briscoe's. Remember at Indy back in May, what happened to Sam Hornish Jr.'s car. Well, it does not take much to disrupt that front end.
In the opening of the show, we talked about spotters. Spotters have to talk to the drivers all the way around and say to Barron, 33 Briscoe's starting to look. He's starting to look. He's on the low side, and you can see a piece of the bodywork from the target car right there in between the concrete cement wall and the safer barrier, just where the padding is there. This is going to be a long break.
Well, before we assess blame, we want to make sure that all the drivers and those involved are okay. Let's check in quickly with Jamie Little.
Well, first of all, Chip Ganassi went back to the medical center where they will bring Ryan for precautionary reasons, and we'll get a story to you as soon as we get an update. But now I'm with Eddie Cheever. He's the owner of the number 51 car that was involved in that incident. Eddie, what did you see?
I saw like everybody else did just from the TV cameras, but it looked like Briscoe went over the back of Alex's car. And Alex is fine. He got out of the car. It's very disappointing, obviously, but I hope he's okay. I mean, he did. There was no. Alex was up high enough, and he just clipped the car and went over the top of him. That could have been a very, very bad accident. Very disappointed for Alex, obviously. Those are the sort of accidents that should never happen.
Well, Eddie Cheever, of course, been a driver in open wheel racing. Scott Goodyear, as you know, for many, many years, he's seen a lot of accidents, and we hope all is well. Obviously, it's good news that Alex Barron is okay.
Jamie, that was one of the things Brian Barnhart, the president of the IRL, talked about in the drivers' meeting this morning. He said, folks, we just have to get to the end of the event. Remember, your open wheel cars are running 215, almost 220 miles an hour in the draft. The length of a football field in about 7/10 of a second. Things happen very, very fast here, Todd, and it's not that you get a chance to think about it. It just comes from reactions.
Well, whether or not that was a case of miscommunication or not enough communication, it was certainly triggered by Alex Barron and number 33, the rookie Ryan Briscoe. And for Ryan Briscoe, this has not been the best of years.
Well, you know, he had the situation where he was on pole and then he turned around and a little wave to the folks there. So he's alert and moving, which is a great sign. Been through accidents before, Todd, and I can tell you that when you hit something as hard as you did there, you just sort of know where you are, but you certainly have a lot of aches and pains. And with a weekend off before we get to Watkins Glen on September 25th, he will have some time to recover.
Well, we'll watch and listen this time on the replay.
Wow, you can hear the, you know, just the ability to actually read all that in front of you and make sure you don't make a drastic move and then put yourself into the wall when you're Scott Dixon driving along like that. That's what I talked about before. It happens so quickly, Todd. It's just a reaction. There's no thinking about it. The monocoque itself is going to be picked up there by the safety crew. And you can see there's the cockpit area right in there. The engine itself usually is in the back section attached to the back of the monocoque, and then you end up having the transmission in the back end, and there's the engine itself sitting there, and they'll start to collect all the pieces and start to get that off the racetrack. We showed you before with the rear wing and the rear tires and the bell housing and the transmission, and all these pieces are just like projectiles going at 200 miles an hour when this is really a deformable structure that just breaks apart.
As bad as it looks, though, the bottom line is the monocoque did its job.
Monocoque did its job. The car did its job because it actually absorbed the impact that the car was given.
Wow. We are going to get an update on Ryan Briscoe and find out and shake everything down on this memorable day in September. We'll step aside, take a break. We'll be back to Joliet after this short break. Is now standing by with our Jamie Little.
That's right, Todd, and Kosuke Matsura is out here as well. Great news. They're both out here. They went in and checked in on their own will. Alex, frightening from your position. What did you see?
I just felt a thump from the left rear of my car, and then Ryan was up over me. He was upside down, and there was a lot of fire. So it was just a quick thud, and the next thing you know, we were in the wall.
So what we watched in the replay, and we're trying to we're showing it right now at home. We've seen it multiple times. From your perspective, though, what had happened? Did he come up on you? Were you in your line?
It was all behind me, and people were moving around, so I can't really say until we see the video, but I just felt the thump and then a lot of fire, and that was it.
Well, we were re-showing it there. We're glad that you're all right, Alex. You okay?
Yeah, fine, thanks.
Okay. Talk to Kosuke Matsura. What happened from your perspective, Kosuke? Where were you involved?
Well, you know, when I into the turn 3 already, you know, Ryan and I don't know, maybe Alex was touched together, and Ryan right into the catch fence, and I had a really, really, you know, big contact, and I just avoided those two guys crash, and you know, I was going middle of the track, but you know, the end, you know, somebody hit left rear, and I spun.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Well, it's good to see him okay. Kosuke Matsura coming off his best finish in the Indy Racing League last weekend in Sonoma. Dr. Punch.
Thank you, Jamie. Let me show you. This is a target car, very similar to what the Chip Ganassi had on the racetrack a moment ago for Ryan Briscoe. Let me show you some of the safety features they put in these cars here the last few years. Now, about 3 years ago, they moved the driver's feet back. See the pedals in here? The feet used to be very much forward here, about another 7 or 8 inches, and that's why they were having a lot of foot injuries early on. They moved the feet back behind the bulkhead. That's why the nose can be sheared away. You could even lose the front wing, but the feet remain intact. Now look back up in here. This is the monocoque part of the car here. This is the capsule, the safety capsule, basically the tub they call it, where the driver sits. Monocoque, carbon fiber and Kevlar. And you see that inside the cockpit here, the driver can be a capsule inside where the driver is fine. There are parts of the car that can shear away. Now we understand we just lost a camera signal from down here, but we're going to tell you that these cars are designed to shear away the side pods and to separate, to dissipate energy. No one knows that better than Kenny Breck a few years ago at Texas. And of course, we just saw this incident a moment ago. Energy being dissipated means less injury and less energy conducted to the driver. Guys?
All right, as we try to decipher through all this, Scott, the red flag comes out. Now, what are they going to do? I know this is discrimination of Brian, as he gets to decide how they're going to handle it. As Brian Barnhart, the president of the IRL, what do you see them doing now?
Well, the officials are looking at this, and once they assess it and see all the debris that's around the race course, the drivers would have a concern also, Todd, as we're watching the fence now being repaired, which is going to take a few laps. But the drivers themselves would be concerned about getting some debris in the tires they just put on and then getting back up to racing speed at 215 to 20 miles an hour. So what they'll do is they'll bring all the cars in the pit lane. They will stop them in the order of which they are on the racetrack. There is no work to be done on the race cars whatsoever. And then once they have repaired the fence and they've cleaned the racetrack, we will resume racing. And no work then can be done unless the IRL officials decide that they allow some things to be done to any of the cars. They will not stop in their pit boxes. They'll actually stop in formation just along pit road.
And I speak again about Brian Barnhart, the discretion of Brian Barnhart on all this with the red flag, as we check in again with Jamie Little.
Well, guys, Ryan Briscoe is being checked out. They said he's awake and alert. He took a hard hit to the head, so he's a little groggy. They're going to transport him to the local hospital. Now, they said the good news is, you guys have been talking about that energy dispersion. They said the cockpit is intact, and that's great news. That's what they hoped for. Unfortunate for Ryan, he had to be the one to test it out, but so far they said he's okay. He's awake and alert and moving around. That's great news. If we get an update, we'll get it to you.
All right, thank you very much, Jamie. As we take a look at Ryan Briscoe's weekend, he has gone from the highest of highs of yesterday, basically thinking he'd claim the pole position, to now he's sitting in the medical center.
Well, let's even go back 2 weeks, Todd. When you think about Sonoma, actually the pole sitter there and then leading the event, and a mistake on his own accord ended up actually taking himself out along with Danica Patrick and Elio Castroneves. But the whole thing that happened there, it's a long 2 weeks before you get to the next event to sort of right your wrong, if you will. He gets here, he thinks he's on pole, and then a couple of hours later he gets moved back from a technical infraction that the team had. Now, they say, I'm hearing down in the garage area right now, it was possibly the rear wing, and the measurement was done by a team member, and the wings were on the cars. And what ends up happening is that I guess the wing was off by a couple of thousandths of an inch. And you know, you might say, well, Jesus, let the car go through, but you can't, because a rule is a rule. And the IRL said, unfortunately, you're out of the boundaries of the rule. So all three cars were disqualified in qualifying and put to the rear. Ryan Briscoe, being obviously the pole sitter, then went to the back.
The safety crew in mass, hard at work here at Joliet, trying to get Chicagoland back up and running as the drivers pull in, park, no work to be done. When we come back, we'll get closer to going green. You're watching the Peak Antifreeze Indy 300 on ABC.
First,
Ryan Briscoe, Alex Barron, and Koski Matsura. A major incident into the fence in between turns 3 and 4. And fortunately, so far, everyone seems to be checking out okay, but there is so much debris on the surface of this track that the course workers felt that it was in the best interest of everyone to bring the drivers in. Let's get it cleaned correctly as we check in now on pit row with Dr. Jerry Punch.
Well, down in Dan Weldon's pit, who began the day with a 79-point lead here in the with 3 events remaining, including today, and a big concern they had early on was a possible problem with the gearbox. And John, I heard,
or worse than we see on television.
Oh, it is. I mean, you know, Bill's been flat out at the command center. When everything happened, he wasn't in New Orleans. He got to Houston, but they...
Just for precautionary sakes, as he jumps on board the helicopter. And Robbie, you're with us, and Scott Goodyear, maybe you can give us an idea of what you see here as we look at this crash one more time. Strangely reminiscent, as we said, about what happened to Kenny Bracken a year ago when Buddy Rice went airborne.
As you know, Robbie, the drivers are always looking for the same piece of real estate. Both those cars seem to be high going into turn 3. Obviously, Alex wanted to come down on the racetrack, and Ryan was trying to actually get on the inside of him. And we talked about spotters earlier in the show, and as you well know, because you're up on the roof yourself right now, actually being on the radio, the spotter is so important.
The spotter is. The spotter is up there providing information to the driver. But again, he's still not the guy driving, but you got to tell the drivers where everybody's on the track, but it's still up to them of how much they're going to challenge things on the racetrack. And a little touch like that, get some air under these cars at 220 miles an hour, that's what can happen.
And as you and I have always known, because we used to drive race cars, you can have help from the spotters, but we're still responsible for driving the cars.
Yeah, and I better get back up on top right now.
That's where Robbie Buell will be going back to, and we thank Robbie again as we are 28 laps complete at the Peak Antifreeze Indy 300 presented. Continue to clean debris, and we'll get an update on Ryan Briscoe. by Buddy Rice. And it was about a year ago, it was actually the 12th of September last year when Buddy Rice had a strangely reminiscent incident similar to Ryan Briscoe's.
Very similar. The target car number 10 being driven by Darren Manning at that point in time. The two cars got together. Again, two tires touching each other, Todd. And anytime you do that, one car is going to lift, just like we saw today.
Buddy's currently sitting in 7th. He started 2nd, but right now he has come to a dead stop. They cannot work on the cars as we are under red flag, and we check in with Jamie Little.
Well, Todd, of course, for all of us, part of the allure of racing is crashing, or I should say is danger, and unfortunately crashing comes with that. And first thing you think of is, at least I think of, is being a mom. And Bev Patrick, Danica Patrick's mom, this is your first red flag race. Bev, what goes through your mind as a mom when you see something like that we just saw from Ryan Briscoe?
Well, thank God he's okay. He's, you know, they're fierce competitors when they're on the track, but, you know, at the end of the day, everybody's friends. Everybody wants everybody to go home safely. So you want to beat him on the track, but everybody wants to go home safe. So I'm glad he's okay, and I hope the rest of the guys are as well.
Well, usually girls are a little bit different and moms with girls. How do you separate that danger factor with the fact that, okay, this is what my daughter wants to do for a living?
I think you have to put it out of your mind a little bit. I mean, these cars are about, I mean, that's a testament right there, what Ryan just went through, and he waved as he got into the ambulance. But, you know, it's as safe as it can be. And, you know, I kind of wish she was a singer someday. But, you know, she's a race car driver, and these are good cars. They're safe cars, and the safety equipment is amazing in these things. So, God willing, everybody else will get home safely, and we'll have a green to checkered flag race.
All right, and speaking of that, Danica Patrick is 10th, and we are getting ready to restart. For that, we go to Dr. Punch.
If you're wondering why Bev Patrick can feel good about how good these cars are built, let me show you with the target cutaway car. Now, how can Ryan Briscoe sustain an impact of over 100 Gs and be awake and alert? So many things built in these cars to make the driver safe. We tried to show you a moment ago the cockpit, the tub it's called. It's a monocoque fiber here, carbon fiber and Kevlar, and of course the foam here that the driver is form fit to. This stays intact. What happens is, where I'm standing, the side pod shears away. Now here's the fuel cell. It holds 30 gallons of methanol. Right behind the fuel cell at the back of this tub is where the engine can separate. That's what happened with Ryan Briscoe. Upon impact, this heavy engine shears away and tumbles away from the impact. Behind it, at the back of the engine, is where the gearbox attaches right here. And the gearbox also separated with the rear end housing and axle assembly intact. And behind that, this is called the attenuator. If a rear impact occurs, this attenuator lessens the impact there of the car. These are why a driver like Ryan Briscoe can take that kind of impact of well over 100 Gs and be noted as awake and alert. It wasn't like this a few years ago, and the Target's cutaway car shows you why it happened that way today. Speaking of Target, let's go back up to their pits where Chip Ganassi is standing by with Jamie.
Great information. Thank you very much, Doc. Yes, I'm joined by Chip Ganassi, the owner of that 33 car of Ryan Briscoe. Chip, we saw you give the okay sign. You talked to him. What did he say?
He's fine, Jamie. He's no apparent broken bones, no lacerations or anything. He was just laying there. He's a little pumped up. I guess he hit his head a little bit, and was a little bit dazed and confused. But the doctor said he's going to be fine. So we're very pleased. And you know, we won't soon forget this one, this September 11th either, I guess.
Well, Chip, I'll tell you what, you have to be so close with your drivers. You brought Ryan over here from Europe. I imagine you get so close to him. What is it like to see one of them out there? It's like one of your kids.
You know, it really puts the fear of God in you when you have to run over to the hospital there and, you know, see these guys. And, you know, the ambulance comes around the corner. You don't know what to expect. And, but just thank God, you know, the work they do on safety for these cars is second to none these days. And we're very pleased that they stay after the safety issue because, as you can see by that accident, it looked pretty bad. At the end of the day, it wasn't. Thank God.
Thank you for your time, Chip Ganassi. And Scott Dixon came in, guys. He had some suspension damage. They were making a repair. You're looking at it right now. Some suspension damage on the right front. Let me show you something. Actually, we'll get back to you, but there's a hole when he exits his pit box here. There's actually a hole that he runs over, and that could have caused the problem. I think they're moving him back now into Ryan Briscoe's spot. You see them taking that suspension off. Tough break for Scott Dixon, guys. He can't get a break. Todd?
All right, first 102 laps of this race. Thomas Schechter would take the lead on lap number 2, getting around Danica Patrick and Sam Hornish Jr. Here was the big incident on lap 20. Ryan Briscoe into the fence. He would be taken to the hospital. The word is he is going to be okay. Koski Metzer and Alex Barron also involved. There was Alex excuse me, Ryan Briscoe being taken to the hospital for observation.